So today we have with us Elizabeth Gross and Tammy Gooler Loeb. Elizabeth Gross is passionate about helping people succeed in searching for new jobs. Former marketing executive at Monster.com, she's assisted countless people with their resumes and job searches. Elizabeth helps clients manage all aspects of their job search journey, making sure their experiences and abilities are positioned as strong as they can be, and ensuring a more productive and rewarding job search. She was a featured speaker at South by Southwest in 2017 and 18, presenting the talks You've Just Been Laid Off, Now What? And Conquering Your Job Search Journey. She holds a BA in professional writing from Carnegie Mellon University, and she's also the owner and head diva at Job Search Divas, which offers career-related services including resume writing, LinkedIn profile development, job search strategies, and networking skills and interview coaching and preparation. And with Elizabeth today is Tammy Gooler Loeb. In her 20 years as an executive career and executive coach, facilitator, and speaker, Ms. Gooler Loeb has inspired people to engage in work that is fulfilling, meaningful, and satisfying. She provides a variety of services to individual clients and businesses in a range of sectors and industries, including executive and career coaching, group facilitation, training, and speaking. This work focuses primarily on workplace communication, leadership strategies, and team development. Tammy hosts a podcast, Work from the Inside Out, which showcases the inspiring stories and practical lessons of people who have transitioned to more satisfying and meaningful work. Her expertise has been showcased in many publications such as HBR Ascend, Fast Company, the Boston Globe, Monster.com, theladders.com, and recently in the book Stretched Too Thin, How Working Moms Can Lose the Guilt, Work Smarter, and Thrive by Jessica FitzHanso. And I'm going to make sure that that's part of our collection. Tammy holds an MBA from Boston University and is a certified professional co-active coach by the Coaches Training Institute. So, about today's program, together these two women have custom-built a job search workshop catered to the confusing times we are in right now. This session will offer you realistic strategies for managing your search, including tips for strengthening your resume and LinkedIn profile, effective networking, and staying motivated. They encourage audience participation and ask for people to share their tips and questions along the way. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth. She should be able to share her screen and
I will.
Tammy.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
So I just want to ask everyone, if you're not already muted, Tammy and I and Jessica will stay off mute. And then if you want to ask a question, obviously, please, either enter it into chat or give us a hand raise, and we will certainly pause during the session. But we'll also have a nice amount of time at the end for questions and answers. So know that you'll have that. I am going to close this and share my screen. And that's what I want to share. Okay. And here we go. So today, we're going to take you guys through job searching during COVID. Don't stop believing. We believe that there are many good things that we can be doing during this time, and we're going to take you through what those look like. You already heard about us, and that's Tammy and me. Here's the agenda for our discussion today. We're going to talk with you about habits to support a positive mindset and managing your expectations during this time. How to build and clarify your brand. And specifically today, we're going to talk about resume and LinkedIn and do a very high level discussion about how to make those as strong as they can be. Owning your process and what it looks like today to make sure that you're keeping a good structure for your job search. Why now is the time to network, and what else you can do. You might be thinking, oh geez, I've done everything I can. Well, we've got a list for you, don't worry. We also will wrap up and talk about all of your to-dos moving forward and what you can leave this session with. And we'll go through some resources at the end, and then, as I mentioned, have a good amount of time for Q&A. So where do you start? If you are on a job search during this time, you might be frustrated, you might feel overwhelmed. Oh my God, it's just too much with everything else happening. There are a lot of things in these times that we can't control. We have no control over the virus. We don't have control over the economy. We do not have control over a lot of things. But our presentation today and our discussion is about the things you can control. And we believe that if you break things up into manageable pieces that are not a big, huge, overwhelming task, that you will be able to succeed in your job search during these times. Tammy, do you want to start with habits of to support the positive mindset?
Yes, I do. So one of the things that I think overrides all the tasks and all the to-dos and things that people think about when they're looking for work is really keeping a positive mindset. And there are a lot of ways to support that. And these are good practices in life in general, but when you are looking for work, especially right now, these are particularly important to keep in mind. So we talk about self-care. What does that mean? Exercise, eating well, getting enough sleep. Those sound like very routine things, but if you're looking for work and it's starting to weigh you down or feel a little bit like a drag, those are some of the things that start to really go by the wayside. You know, you say, I don't feel like exercising, or, you know, especially during COVID, everybody has their favorite junk food, yours truly included. So, you know, it's just these are things to be mindful of. And a lot of people also talk about job search being a full-time job. It can be. And you do want to give it some focused attention. You also want to take some breaks away from it, really step away from it and invest yourself in some other activities. Be with people you enjoy being with or talking with. Do activities that you enjoy, things that you're able to do at this time, of course. But really feel like you've had a break away from the job search, enough to really refresh you so that when you go back to it, you feel like you're stepping into it almost with a fresh pair of eyes. And then there's a wonderful exercise practice that we recommend that people do. It comes out of the field of positive psychology. And it's an exercise called 3 Good Things. And what you do is every night before you go to sleep, you just think about, you can write them down if you want to. You just think about 3 good things. It doesn't have to be what happened that day. It could be just 3 good things. 3 good things in your life, 3 good things. It could be three things you enjoy eating. It could be anything. Just 3 positive thoughts, 3 good things. And it's amazing if you do that habitually, how it will impact how you function during the day. It's not the fix for everything, but there's evidence that proves that it has an impact on our brain science. So how simple is that? And it's not a pill. So that's a wonderful little practice. And then the other piece of this is to practice the art of reframing in your mind. So what I mean by that is, you know, you think about, if you look at a glass of water and let's say it's half full, right? Well, it's also half empty, right? So you can reframe, is the glass half full or is it half empty? Are you a half full kind of person or are you a half empty kind of person? So, you know, kind of the positive and the negative. But a lot of times when we're struggling with something or we're feeling stressed by something, our mind tends to go towards more negative thinking. A lot of us do that. We're our own worst critics. Or when it comes to job search, we'll start to think, oh, I'm not enough of this, I'm too much of that. They're not going to call me for an interview. I'm too old. I don't have this skill. They'll think I'm too experienced and I don't want, you know, they're going to not call me because they think I want too much money. Or there's all kinds of thoughts that go through our heads. I call all those thoughts your committee, because it's like this group of voices that run in your head and they're having a meeting and they're telling you all the reasons why things aren't going to work out. And so we all have this. We all have a committee. So the point is to shut the committee down as much as possible. It'll come back. They'll have a new meeting. But reframing it and saying, thank you, committee. Your meeting is over right now. I need to reframe some of those thoughts and move on, because it's not to say that some of those things aren't true. You know, we know things like ageism do occur, but those thoughts are not going to help you in your job search. And there's lots of other reasons and ways to move forward. There you go.
Tammy, I wanted to mention to you, I always think of this and then I never say it, but ever since you brought up the 3 good things, I've been doing that. And it really is so, it's just so refreshing, even if they're simple things that you remember from the day. It just helps kind of wind down the day and really focus at the end of the day on something positive. So,
and I'll just say one more thing about that. And that is that, I think some of us have that habit at the end of the day of thinking of all the things we didn't get done. Think about, that's a great trigger for you, that when you start having those thoughts of all the things you didn't get done, that's your committee. Stop the committee and think of 3 good things. It doesn't mean that it doesn't change whether or not you got anything done, but think of 3 good things. We're not trying to sugarcoat things here, but it really is a matter of keeping some kind of balance and giving yourself some energy to move forward.
Definitely. And if you would, Tammy, during our process slide, don't forget to bring in the Pomodoro. That's the other one I've been doing.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Wait till you guys hear this one a little bit later on.
Yeah. And it's not a tomato.
It's not, I know. Okay. So managing your expectations now, more important than ever. Job searching and interviewing look different. Tammy?
Yeah. So here's another thing. Expectations, assumptions, those are all part of that committee. You send a resume out somewhere, or you call somebody or email somebody, asking for information, or you're trying to make a connection with somebody and you don't get a response, but you expected a response. So this happens with my clients all the time, where they'll say, well, I applied for that job and it's been a week. I guess they're not going to call me. So you assumed they would call you within a week, and now you expect they won't call you because it's been a week and you haven't heard anything. And there are so many reasons why those 2 things are probably not true. They might be true, but there are many more reasons why those things might not be true. I'm not going to go into the details of why they might not be true, but I do want to point out to you that when you make assumptions and you create expectations and those things don't come true, you then give fuel to your committee and you bring yourself down. And, it's nice when you have a pleasant surprise, right? When they call you the next week or something, but you also create a scenario in your head that doesn't help you. There's a lot more information you need to know around what may have really occurred. So staying open and curious is very important to that process. So when you find yourself starting to go down the route of creating assumptions and creating expectations, go to the point of not concluding anything, but rather ask more questions and get curious about those things, because there's a good likelihood that there are other answers there. For example, one thing was, I remember going to the supermarket very early on during COVID, and I still saw a few people without masks on. And my first assumption was, well, aren't they inconsiderate? They're not wearing a mask. And, I walked away later and I thought, well, maybe they have the antibodies, maybe they don't feel the need to wear a mask. Maybe they're not inconsiderate, or maybe they haven't heard about it yet. Just trying to come up with other scenarios, glass half full kinds of things. Anyway, I'll leave that be. I think everyone probably should wear a mask, but that's another story. Another thing is, these remote interviews, we have expectations of what's going to happen in an interview. This is all new territory for all of us. It's new territory for you as a candidate. It's new territory for the people interviewing you. They don't know how to conduct a whole series of interviews remotely. Likewise, it's all new for everyone. So just know that this is a shared experience and they don't know any better than you do. And likewise, people who, candidates who go into interviews often make the assumption that the person interviewing them is a skilled interviewer. And they expect that the interviewer has looked at their resume. They expect that the interviewer is going to ask them certain types of questions. And sometimes you walk out of the interview saying, wow, that was nothing like what I thought it would be. Well, that's because many interviewers are not skilled interviewers, and you really don't know what to expect. So you have to prepare across the board in the best ways you can when you go into these situations. And the best thing you can do is just go in and be your best self, not go in with some expectations and assumptions about what you think they're going to want, because you have no idea. You don't have a crystal ball and you're not a mind reader. So also, in the process of expecting to find a certain type of job or wanting to go down a particular pathway, whether it's a certain type of functional area in terms of your work or a certain industry, right now things are pretty crazy out there. There are certain industries that are hiring more than others, and certain functional roles that are in higher demand. We have some ideas about that. But there's also, a heightened sense of uncertainty right now. And I would say that life is uncertain all the time. Right now, it's just staring us in the face more. So what I've been suggesting to people is create a plan B and even a plan C. So I think a lot of us maybe have had plan B in mind, have a what they call a side hustle, another way to maybe bring in some cash if you need cash, or coming up with, having some kind of a safety net somewhere. Some people have, savings, or they have other people who help support them, or some other means of making a living other than what they're counting on for a regular employment. So there are all kinds of things that you can take into account. But I think that we have to think very, very broadly. And that leads me to the last point here, and that is, I think that we all need to be entrepreneurs now. That doesn't mean I'm saying you have to be self-employed, but I do think that we need to think like entrepreneurs in our own careers. You need to be the business owner of your own career. I think the days are gone when we can expect our employers to take care of us, even if our employers expect loyalty from us. It's a bit of an oxymoron, but I think this is the way of the world now. We need to think like an entrepreneur in our own career and be in charge of our own career. If we stay open and curious and we keep our expectations and assumptions and our committees in check, that will help us to be entrepreneurial in our own careers. There you go.
So I'm going to take you guys through building and clarifying your brand. This is one of the things that we also know that we have more control over. And we're going to focus on resume and LinkedIn. So building and clarifying your brand really starts with a strong resume. And what is a strong resume? A strong resume illustrates a concise summary of your career. It is your professional calling card. It's still the thing that you use to open the door for new opportunities, for networking, for investigating, potential new plans B and C. And even today, which we are in such a social media focused world, you still need that resume. You still need it to apply for a job, and it's so useful for when you're connecting with folks and networking, and they're saying, hey, you know what, can you give me like an overview of what you've done in your life? You can send off that resume. So the way you build a strong resume is through a really balanced, it's a balance of content and formatting, and it helps present your experience in a scannable, very easily readable way. And I'm going to take you guys through what that looks like right in the next slide. So one of the things that that I use in today's resume best practices is making sure that the top 1/3 is really, really working as hard as it can. And the top 1/3 is everything, if you guys can see above where it says professional experience. So from where it says Patricia Foster and then sales leader and then areas of expertise, that whole piece is the top 1/3. But you want to start with a resume that has a format and a layout that is very easy on the eyes, visually appealing. Now, this isn't a complicated visually complicated resume. This is very simple, but it allows whomever is receiving it to read through it quickly. It's not jammed full of information. There's good white space. There are some lines to help you kind of pause as you go through the resume and absorb the information. So really making sure you have a clean looking resume is the first step to making sure that it actually is working hard for you. Now that top 1/3 is your most valuable real estate. As I mentioned, that's the area where we are anticipating, and I'm sorry to share this statistic, but I have to, that we know that people spend something like 7 seconds reading a resume, and that's not a lot of time. So what we are trying to do in that top 1/3 is we're trying to capture everything about, in this case, Patricia Foster. What are her strengths? What are her skills? What is the value that she is going to bring to a potential employer? And we're trying to bring that out through creating a professional title for her, a summary that is really her elevator pitch, and then also wrapping it up with areas of expertise. So let's start with the title. So your resume should have a title, and that should be your title. Now, it's not your current job title or the job that you had, recently. It's the title that helps describe who you are as a professional. Now, Patricia Foster, in this example, she's a real estate agent. So she's a sales leader. She handles client management, and she's a communication expert. Those were the things that Patricia Foster felt really helped describe who she was as a professional. And so we used those things to be her title. And you can see how we wove things together a little bit to make sure we were covering a number of different bases. Then we built a professional summary for her. And this is something that's, 3 to 4 sentences. It's quick, it's concise, and it really helps the reader in that precious 7 seconds understand, who is this person? What is this person good at? What are their strengths? What are their skills? What are the things that they are going to bring to my organization? It is the hardest thing to write on a resume, but it should really encapsulate all of the things you've done throughout your career and what you're bringing forward with you now. Under that, you'll see areas of expertise, and these are keywords, and they serve 2 purposes. So the first purpose is that these words help complement that paragraph up above, that professional summary. So we're talking about things like marketing. She has to market for her real estate agency. She has to build those client relationships to make sure that she has a good roster of clients to be able to work with. Market research on properties and property values, lead generation, of course. She has to make sure that pipeline is full with new prospects, analyzing her clients to make sure what level property they can afford. And, going through things like contracts and negotiation, presentation skills, and even managing events, things like open houses or, prior to COVID, things that would help really promote her real estate business. So those areas of expertise complement what's going on in the paragraph, but they also act as keywords that can help her resume be aligned with a particular job posting. So they're really important, that whole top 1/3, to make sure you have that hanging together really tight, because if whomever is receiving this resume, if they only read this, they should get it. They should understand this is what you have to offer, and they understand what your strengths and your skills are. You want to keep it, as I mentioned, really clean and concise. And in this particular resume, I am using Calibri font. And my two favorite fonts for resumes are Calibri and Cambria. And you guys may already be familiar with these, but if you're not, they both, so this Calibri is a more contemporary font. It doesn't have a serif. Cambria is a little bit more traditional, does have a serif. These fonts translate well both across different platforms. They work well on screen and printed. A lot of people still print resumes. So I recommend taking a look at those fonts and using, and they're very accepted in any, whether you're on a Mac or a PC or you have an old version of Word or a new version of Word. These are the fonts that are really best transferable. The other tip and rule actually is that you don't overdo it with your resume. 2 pages is the max for anyone that's been in their career longer than 10 years. If you've been in your career under 10 years, then you can definitely get away with 1 page. But if you've been in your career for anywhere from 10 years to now, 2 years is, 2 pages is the maximum. And the reason is that people really don't need to read every single thing about you. We should definitely have your career outlined on these 2 pages, but they definitely don't need every single section to be, to be as big as some of the more recent sections. Now, if you want to know more about resume best practices, don't worry. We are doing a session. We're deep diving into resumes next week, next Wednesday here with the Chelmsford Library again. And we're going to go through all of these sections in more detail and have a bigger discussion specifically about resumes. My last tip here, though, is proofreading. So as we know, it's a very competitive job market out there, and the fastest way to get your resume thrown into the garbage is to have any sort of typo or punctuation error or a word that is, even though it might be spelled correctly, it's not the right meaning. Tammy always reminds me, don't in this section of the presentation, don't rely on spell check, because spell check will only correct words that are misspelled, and there are many words that are like other words that might slip through. So proofread, and if you're not good at it, then share it with somebody who is. Make sure you call in your resources, call in the troops. Make sure that someone who is better at proofreading takes a look at it. And also helpful, I think, to have somebody else take a look at it, because we get very close to this and we can kind of almost not see things just because we might be looking at it an awful lot. So proofread. Let's go on to LinkedIn. Why is LinkedIn an important part of your brand? So just like your resume tells your professional story, LinkedIn really helps you do that too. And in today's job market, you must have both. You must have a really strong resume and you must have a really strong LinkedIn profile. But LinkedIn has some other tools that are really neat and other features that really help us even build a bigger, more dynamic view of ourselves. So leveraging LinkedIn is really important in today's job searching. LinkedIn lets you tell your story, and you add personality. You obviously have your headshot on LinkedIn, you have other images, you might have examples of your work, and it's less formal than your resume. It is a social media platform, so it allows us to add more personality. And also because it's web-based, we can include, like I mentioned, examples of our work, presentations, articles we might have written or been mentioned in, websites that we might have that are important to us. It also allows us to network more effectively. So LinkedIn is the #1 professional networking resource right now. So it really helps us find connections and engage with our connections. This is a great way to do that, is through LinkedIn. As you are working through your job search, you can also research potential employers, find out who's hiring. You can set up job alerts. You can follow different employers. You can learn more about them by looking at their LinkedIn page, and also searching and applying for jobs. You can use your profile to actually apply for a job on LinkedIn. I don't know if anyone's done this, but the easy apply button is super easy. So you want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile tells that same story that your resume does. It doesn't have to necessarily use the exact same language, because again, we are on social media, it's less formal, but you should be able to hit send on that easy apply button and have the same general information go to the job posting. One of the most important things of why it's most important to have a fully built out profile is you want to be found. So over 90% of people searching for talent vet candidates through LinkedIn. So you want to make sure that if they are looking, you are being found because of the way that you've built your profile. And I'm going to show you some best practices now. So fully building out your profile. Now, I'm sure everybody here has a headshot on LinkedIn. That's the most important thing, is you want to have a visual of who you are. That's a key as we work with this social media platform. The other thing you want is to make sure that that headshot shows you as you are today. So obviously, no pictures from, weddings 20 years ago or something that has somebody else's head cut out of the image. You need a shot that represents who you are. Make sure you look like you are today, and also as a professional. Anything from about the shoulders up is a good perspective, and making sure that there's not any distracting elements in the background. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the background image behind your headshot, you may see something on your profile or other people's profiles that's like a blue sort of galaxy thing. That's a default image. And that LinkedIn has dropped in there. You can actually edit that, and it's another, obviously, way to share more information about yourself. Maybe it's a hobby or a passion that you have, or a place you like to visit. Really just giving you another opportunity to build out who you are on LinkedIn. In my background image here, this is just an image that makes me happy because it's a place that I visited out on the West Coast, and it was a beautiful morning, and I was standing at the edge of this, piece of land looking out into the ocean and seeing these things. They're called the Headlands in Mendocino. And it's just an image that, is something that's very personal to me. And it's a very nice place that I visited. So you should have something like that too. The blue galaxy means that you're not engaged with your profile, and that's not a good impression to give on LinkedIn. Let's talk about the headline. So are you guys familiar with this section that's right below your name? So where my name is, you'll see underneath it says job search strategist, resume writer, head diva. That piece of information is my headline. And this headline, here's another interesting piece of information about LinkedIn. This headline is the highest ranked piece of information in terms of search on your profile. So it's really important that you use a headline that describes who you are as a professional. This shouldn't be your title from your either current job or recent job. It will be the default if you don't put anything there. LinkedIn defaults that to whatever your most recent job is. But think of this as an opportunity for you to get noticed, again, by the people who are looking for folks with your kind of talent by describing who you are. You can go back to that title that we just talked about on the resume, and you could use some of those same descriptors or that same descriptor as your title, as your professional title. So you really want to make sure that you use this headline strategically. And the reason, think about if you were searching for someone and you were searching for someone like me, a resume writer, right? So that's why it's very important for me to have those keywords in my title. If you're searching for someone who's good at marketing, or if you're searching for someone who does product development, those are the kinds of keywords that you want to think about in your headline. What doesn't really resonate is manager or vice president or director. Those aren't really good descriptors. So think about what makes a good descriptor that could help you get noticed in terms of these searches that we're talking about on LinkedIn. There are also some sections that we haven't really looked at in a while on our profiles, and now is a great time to delve in, scrolling through the whole thing and kind of taking inventory of what we're talking about on LinkedIn and how we're talking about ourselves. So there's an area called skills and endorsements, and that's something that you may not have looked at in a while. It was something added by LinkedIn a couple years ago. and it got populated by other people sort of endorsing you for certain things, other people in your network. Now is a great time to take a look at that. Make sure that you are, this is another area for keywords that are important. So make sure you've got the right keywords about your skills and all of your expertise in there. I think LinkedIn lets you have 50 different terms in there. So make sure that you are talking about your technical skills, your interpersonal skills. If you are, if you have specific categories of expertise, this is where you want to make sure that you have fully built out that section, the skills and endorsements section, and also clean it up. You know, if there's things in there that you're thinking, you know, that's not really something I want to really promote about myself anymore, you can edit them out. So you want to really take a look at that section, make sure you're using it to the best of its ability and function, and that it's really talking about you as you are today. You also want to get some recommendations. If you do not have recommendations in your LinkedIn profile, you're missing out on an opportunity to, again, express or have your profile express to others what it's like to work with you or what it's like to work for you. So recommendations in a profile are really important. In order to get them, you have to reach out to someone in your network who you'd like to have recommend you, and you have to do it through LinkedIn. And just a paragraph describing, you know, what it's like to work with you or for you, that's plenty. It doesn't have to be a long letter of reference or anything like that. It's just an indication that, again, lets somebody who finds your profile understand, hey, what's it like to work with her? What does she have to offer? What are the things that other people have to say about her? So make sure you have at least 2 or 3 recommendations that are recent in your profile. You can also, if you're actively on a job search, once you've got everything built out, you can set yourself as available for new opportunities. And if anyone needs help doing that, I can put the instructions in the chat, or I can actually follow up with a sheet on how to set yourself as available for opportunities. It's also important on LinkedIn, because we are talking about an online social media platform, to keep it informal. Writing in the first person is okay. This is not okay on the resume, because resumes for some reason are still very formal. But on LinkedIn, you can write in first person. So you'll see in my about section, which is right there below where it says message, I talk about myself using I. I've had a passion for helping people while I was at Monster. So I've used this more conversational tone in writing my about section. My pro tip here is, if you want to connect all of your social media to each other, then add your LinkedIn URL to your other social media platforms. So if you're somebody that's on Facebook a lot, or Twitter or Instagram, you can connect everything together, and so that you have a better reach. Or if you're someone like me, I kind of keep Facebook as a personal thing and LinkedIn as a professional thing. But it's really up to you. The nice thing is that you have the control over how much you want to share about yourself across all of your social media. I want to talk a little bit now about owning your process. So it's really important during this time to be methodical and to be organized. Things can kind of get out of the control during this crazy COVID time. And also we can feel like we don't have a structure. So being methodical and organized can, again, help us get ourselves into a place where we can move forward in our job search. And one of the most important things is to create a centralized tracking system for all your activities. This could be an Excel spreadsheet. It could be some sort of list that's a centralized list. It could be a Google sheet, anything that works for you. There are certain CRM programs that you can actually use, anything that's a natural fit for the way that you would like to keep track. The point is that it's centralized so that you have one place that you list all of your activities, your networking contacts that you want to reach out to, companies that you're interested in that you want to research further, maybe the job applications that you've put in and the ones that you want to put in, networking meetings that you're having or conversations. everything goes in that tracking system, that tracker. This helps you for a number of reasons. It helps you return to where you left off every day in your job search. It also helps you really keep a roadmap of everything that you're doing for your job search. And instead of having, you know, a little thing written on a Post-it note over here and a scrap of paper over here, everything's in one spot. You can even have tabs or color coding on things maybe that you want to follow up on, or things that you haven't researched yet. Maybe you have a parking lot for things that you're just thinking about, but really think about what kind of system would work best for you, and then use it without fail. The consistency for how you go about your job search is key. So if you have the ability to, it's really handy to structure your job search as part of your day, kind of like a job. So if you say to let's use the hours from 10 to 2 for an example. If that's the best time for you because, you know, people in the house are busy doing other things, or that's the time where you have the most energy, then let's call it 10 to 2 is your job search time. And make sure you let other people know in your house that that's what you are going to be doing from 10 to 2. And then that's when you're focused on it. So again, going back to that tracking system, making sure that you're using your time from 10 to 2 to, you know, apply for the jobs, researching companies, making those phone calls or those outgoing emails to connect with folks, or LinkedIn invites. Really making sure you're committing to a number of hours for your search.
And speaking of hours, Elizabeth, I'll just add to what you're saying about this, because there are many people who can't maintain focus for that many hours in one sitting. That's not unusual at all.
Right.
So there is a method. It's called the Pomodoro technique. And Pomodoro means tomato in Italian. And I believe that the person who developed this, I don't know if they were Italian or whether they just liked Italian food. I'm not sure. But it is a well-known technique. And what it is you sit down to do a certain amount of work, and you set a timer for 25 minutes. And there are actually like journals or guidebooks that have been developed that help you track your time in this way. And if anyone's curious, feel free to email me. I'll send you a link to one of these tracking books. They're really great organizers. And then there are books written about the Pomodoro technique, whole books written on it. But basically, you set a timer, you work for 25 minutes, and then you stop and you take a 5-minute break. And then if you're not done with that task, you go back for another 25 minutes, or, you know, if you have something else to do, you do it and you come back. But the idea being that sometimes when you have a very finite amount of time, you actually get more done. And why the 25 minutes, I'm not exactly sure, but it's worked for a lot of people. And there's other guidelines around it. But this little tracking guide book a number of my clients have bought it and used it and found it very, very helpful. And it also has, by tracking it in a certain way, you can start to understand how many Pomodoros does it take me to write a cover letter, or how many Pomodoros does it take me to go through Indeed for my weekly search on Indeed, you know, or things like that. So, and you start referring to them as Pomodoros. So anyway, if anyone's interested in that particular journal booklet, I can send you a link to that too.
I have been using the Pomodoro ever since you started talking about it. I find, especially because we're at home all the time now, other people might be in your purview. You've got things to do that take you away from your work, like, or your job search, like, you know, throwing in the laundry or anything. Anything, I don't know, cleaning that counter that just all of a sudden caught the corner of your eye. It just, I've been really using that Pomodoro, and I'll tell you, when I started doing it, I put my phone on, you know, for the 25 minutes, Tammy, and I found myself like 5 minutes would go by and already I was like
So
getting
you just
distracted
broke
with
up a little
something.
bit, Elizabeth.
Oh.
Can you say that again?
I was just going to say, I've been using the Pomodoro method, and I set my phone for the timer on my phone for 25 minutes, and that's how I've been doing it. And it's been really helpful. It's been really helpful. And it also helped me realize how much I was letting myself get distracted in even just a 25-minute period. So
Oh, really?
if I could just keep going back, and I would say to myself, Pomodoro, Pomodoro. Yeah. So it's really working. So again, I learn so much from you all the time, but that's definitely a good one. But you know, back to so setting time aside for yourself, setting a goal for what you want to achieve during a week or a day. You know, maybe you've got a number of job postings that you want to apply to, or a number of people that you want to reach out to who are in your network list. You know, set some goals and track them. And this, again, your system, whatever your tracking system is, helps you do that. We are at home, you know, we do have other people in the house sometimes, and dogs and kids and whatever else. Maybe you might have a lot of things going on, but you want to try to eliminate distractions and maximize your time, just like a job. So we mentioned a little bit before about, you know, letting folks know in your house, like these are the hours that I'm going to be doing this, and it's important to me that I stay focused. So that they understand that's what you're doing, and that there can be some level of really, you know, respect for what you're doing, as well as the things that they need also. The last point I want to make here is engaging someone else to be on your team. And sometimes that could be someone who helps you stay accountable. It could be somebody who you call your accountability partner. It could be somebody who's going through a job search, and you just want to have kind of a like-minded person to you know, talk with and bounce ideas off of and brainstorm, even if they're not in your same industry or even at the same level you are. If someone else is doing this in your network, see if you could set up some time to talk with them, maybe on a weekly or every other week basis, and get somebody else on your team so that you don't feel like you're doing this alone. There are also a number of job seeker groups that have taken their in-person meetings virtually. So those can be really useful too. And just like Tammy mentioned at the beginning, take a break when you need it. If there's a day where you just, you know, open up your computer and you say, oh my gosh, I just can't deal with this today, then shut it and go off and do something else, and come back tomorrow re-energized, revitalized, and recharged, and hit it when you're all in. So definitely take a break when you need it. Tammy, do you want to talk about networking?
I love talking about networking. Definitely. So, networking is, you know, yes, it's important to have a solid resume and a solid LinkedIn profile, because when you apply for a job or you are networking with people, they will immediately look at your LinkedIn profile. But many of you have heard this already. At least 80 to 85% of people find their next job through networking. And a lot of people will say to me, oh, I don't know if I have. And then you start asking them, well, how did you find your last job and the job before that? And they'll say, oh, well, I just got referred through someone at work. Well, guess what? That is networking. Unless you applied cold with answering a job posting with a resume without talking to anyone else, you were networking whether you knew it or not. So there's a lot of ways to go about networking. One of the things that I suggest or share with people all the time is, I've had people say to me, I don't have a network. Unless you know nobody, you have a network. So your network is everybody you know. Reconnecting with people you've worked with previously, or people you know professionally, people you went to school with, even if you haven't talked to them in a long time, most people start with that. They start with people who they have a professional connection to. But I suggest that you connect with people way beyond that. Connect with people who you know personally, connect with neighbors, connect with family members. They don't have to be in the same city that you're in. The point is, if people don't know that you're looking, they're not going to be able to help you. The other thing I want to say is that, I know that for some people it feels a little manipulative or a little bit, false or fake to kind of, introduce yourself to someone and, kind of try to be friendly. Well, be yourself, introduce yourself to someone. Usually you can get an introduction and make it a warm introduction, but you can say, look, I'm very interested in the company you work for or in the kind of work you do. I'd love to hear more about it. I am looking for work in that arena. But first, I'd really like to hear about you. I'd like to hear about the kinds of things that you're doing. What are the challenges? What are the things you really enjoy about it? How did you get into it? You want to be interested and not interesting. This is advice from Dale Carnegie. The important thing about that is that networking really is a two-way street. You want to learn something about the person that you're having a conversation with, because down the road, they may need something from you. Down the road, a short way down the road, you want to be able to thank them and reference something they told you about them. Or down the road, to stay connected to them, you may be able to send them an article about something that they mentioned when they were talking to you about themselves. Or if somebody does you a favor and connects you with a job opportunity, you may even want to send them a little gift, something that's relevant to their interests. So there's all kinds of reasons why you want to be interested and not interesting. Take the focus off yourself a little bit. I think people get nervous about networking because they think it's all about them, and they're not used to that, or they're not comfortable with that. I mean, some people love networking and they're comfortable with it. I'm not talking to those people. But the important thing is to have a conversation where you're building your information base. Networking really is research. You're trying to get information. You're trying to get advice. You're asking people what kinds of, who else should I talk to? What else do you think I need to know? Is there somewhere else that I should be looking, or are there other professional groups or associations that I should look to participate? I'm trying to put my best foot forward here. What other suggestions might you make? But always try to leave a conversation with at least the name of one other person who you can talk to next. That's how we weave our webs of networks. And it is a numbers game. This is your primary task in job search, is networking. The rest of your time, like looking on Indeed or other job sites, that should be about 10% of your time. The rest of it is really talking to people, finding out where they work, who's hiring, maybe companies that just got funding, where the openings might be, where the growth is. You're going to get that from people. You're not going to get that by looking at Indeed and looking at job postings that may have been posted 30 plus days ago.
And Tammy, can I just reinforce what you're saying there by, the easy thing to do is to hit send on a job application. It's quick. Obviously we have to do it. It's part of the process.
Yeah.
The networking piece takes longer. It's more in depth, but it also is going to be more productive. So it's a time investment that has definitely a gain.
Better ROI.
Better ROI.
Better ROI.
Yeah.
And you can do it efficiently. Most people that you want to talk to probably are busy also. So, spend a few minutes on the phone or on Zoom with them. Especially right now, you don't even have to invite someone for coffee. I've seen a lot of people when they'll send somebody a card. Like, let's say you've been trying to reach out to somebody and maybe you're not hearing from them. And maybe somebody who you really want to talk to as a last ditch effort, send them a little note in the mail with a $5 Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts card, and say, hey, I know we can't meet for coffee right now. Have one on me. Just want to, would love to spend, 15 minutes with you just seeing if, and don't say I want to pick your brain. Kiss of death, okay? Do not pick people's brains. They don't like that. It's not a nice thing to say. But definitely say, I was hoping to have a chance to chat with you about your work and the industry and what's going on. Please have a cup of coffee on me. And, I'd love to get on your calendar for 15, 20 minutes.
Could be a virtual coffee meeting.
Thing to do. There's nothing wrong with doing that, especially if it's somebody you really want to talk to. And, what's the worst thing that'll happen? Nothing. You move on to the next one. So this is really, though, where you need to spend most of your time.
Yep.
Did I say that enough? I think I did.
So. Yeah.
So what else can you do? Well, this is really along the same lines as what we've been talking about. So what are some other ways? I think when I was talking about networking, I was really referring to quite a bit of the one-on-one kinds of conversations, which I think really are very valuable. But there are other ways to meet people. There are virtual meetups now. Meetup.com is a great place to go to find groups where people have common interests with you. And I know that those have been excellent ways for people to find out about job openings. So you go to meetup.com, you'll find groups where people will gather who have mutual professional interests. Sometimes those groups are geographically based, sometimes not. But I wouldn't worry about geography, because you might talk to someone in California who happens to know somebody who works in Boston. So don't limit yourself in that way. If you are worried about your skills or sharpening your skills, online seminars, workshops, things like that, attending conferences online, those are great ways to, keep your skills up to date. And you can add some of that information to your resume. I had a client who was a software engineer, very experienced, but there was one particular software package he didn't have skills in, and he noticed that a lot of the job descriptions he was looking at, they wanted that particular package. So he went online and he took the course and he practiced it, and he was able to at least say he had some proficiency in it. And that kind of kissed him over the edge, and he was able to get a job. I think it also boosted his confidence a little bit too. And then there are job seeker groups. So a lot of the libraries locally are hosting lots of sessions like this. We know that there's a job seeker group in Westford. There's one in Acton that are very active. I think they have their own websites. So those are Tewksbury. So those are job seeker groups where the actual job seekers also mix and mingle with each other quite a bit and offer each other ideas and leads. And then there are organizations out there that also help job seekers get a leg up. I just had a conversation yesterday with somebody from an organization called Reach Hire. And they work with people who have been out of work for have been voluntarily out of work for 2 years. So that means somebody who's been home with kids, or an elder person, somebody who may have come back from the military, and they provide returnships, as they call them. So they provide some training, and then they help people get their foot in the door for jobs. So they're doing a lot of work locally here with Fidelity Investments, and they are helping people get into sort of mid-management roles. So it's worth taking a look there. And there's other organizations that do that kind of thing as well. What else can you do right now? Practice your interview skills, find somebody else, or look online for the best interview questions and the best interview answers, and you can practice in front of a mirror or with someone else. We already talked about online classes, pursue certifications, and then, look online for your, professional associations, subscribe to their newsletters, listen to some podcasts that cover career issues like my podcast, for example. And there's another podcast that I'm going to suggest to you that's in the resources section, and a newsletter that I think is also very valuable. So, stay on top of what it takes to apply for work in this day and age, because it's a very different world out there than it was even a few years ago, especially when you're applying online for jobs.
Yep. So we will go through the resources in the next slide, but right now we want to leave you guys with a summary. We want you to be ready for this job search. Checking your assumptions and expectations and maintaining a positive mindset, making sure you've built your brand, updating your resume to ensure it's strong and impactful, building your LinkedIn profile, same thing, making sure those two things are hanging together and really presenting you as strongly as they can, outlining your plan for how you're going to go about the search, setting goals, tracking your activities, keep on networking. Now is a great time to connect with people. We're all working from home, or many of us still are. So, those commuting times aren't a factor anymore, and folks don't have to worry about having a private conversation with everyone else in the office being able to hear, because we're here, we're home, and, folks also might welcome the break. So keep on networking, and be an entrepreneur in your career. Do not let your committee wear you down. Take charge of it and really be an entrepreneur to move things forward.
So in terms of resources, we just offered you a small number of resources because we know that many of you have already accessed some resources. But we wanted to just offer you a few, because the few that we're offering you here are quite comprehensive and extremely useful. So job-hunt.org is a newsletter, an online newsletter that is offered through, it's actually a local person who puts it together, and it's very comprehensive in terms of what it offers. You can subscribe to it and get regular notifications when they put up new articles and through your email. And I highly, highly respect the information that comes through job-hunt.org. Lots of good tips, cutting edge information, what you need to know as a job seeker today. I happen to like themuse.com. They post a lot of different companies and jobs. They're not for everyone, but they do post quite a variety of jobs and companies, and they also talk about company culture, which is unusual. I think Indeed is starting to do more of that as well, but I love the way their site is organized. They also have, they also do a really good job of putting the word out on a regular basis. I subscribe and get regular emails from them, and I think they have some really good blogs. Yep. And I think they even have their own cadre of some career coaches and people like that work for them.
Yep.
But they're just a really good source of information. And then this podcast called Find Your Dream Job. You can find it through the website maxlist.com. Mac Pritchard is a colleague of mine. Both Elizabeth and I have been on this podcast. It's outstanding. And I always think it's funny that it's called Find Your Dream Job, because Mac is extremely pragmatic and practical, and he insists that his guests offer very practical advice about the job search process. So I'm not sure why it's called Find Your Dream Job, because that doesn't sound quite as practical as Mac is, nor is the podcast all that. It's not really that dreamy. I mean, they sometimes talk about people finding their dream job, but it really offers tremendously good practical advice. And it's one of the top career podcasts of all those podcasts in that category.
Yeah.
So highly recommend those resources.
Definitely. So that's what we have for you guys today. I want to make sure everyone has a chance to take a look at our contact information if you want to get in touch with us later, of course. But does anyone have any questions or things that we can talk about further?
Yeah, we are happy to stick around for a few minutes and see and check the chat. There's some information in there. If you want to download the chat, you can go to that little box in the lower right-hand corner with the 3 dots and click on it, and it will automatically send a text-based document to your downloads file on your computer if you are on your computer, and that way you don't have to worry about seeing all the information that was put into the chat. Jennifer did a great job of sort of inputting some information along the way.
Oh, great.
But any questions we can answer right now, feel free to either raise a hand or unmute yourself and tell us what can we do. Yes. Liz? Is it Liz?
Yes. So how long should you wait before following up with a company that you did interview with?
That you interviewed with?
Yeah.
First interview, second interview?
First, and then they say, we're interested, we're going to have someone else get back to you.
Okay, so they said they were going to get back to you for a second interview.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, a week or so.
Okay.
You can check in, just say, just circling back. I mean, sometimes when they say they'll get back to you, you can always ask them, when might I expect to hear from somebody? And, it's not unusual that they take longer than they said they would, and don't read into that. A lot of places are working slower and less efficiently than they normally do.
Yep.
And some places say one thing and do another because that's the way they run.
Okay, great.
Definitely don't feel bad about following up and then continuing to follow up.
Yeah.
Just once a week, whatever you feel is the right pace. But especially if you've had that interview, there, and like Tammy said, there could be things going on behind the scenes that have just taken them off of their intended schedule, and it has nothing to do with you, but making sure that you're staying top of mind, reinforcing your interest in the position,
right.
Anxious to move on to next steps kind of thing is absolutely business as usual for that.
It lets them know that you're still available too.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've seen some organizations where they start interviewing people and then they delay and then they lose candidates sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you.
Sure. Good luck.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Questions? Yes, Christina.
Yes, I have a question and a comment that may be helpful to the others. But the question is, what if I've changed careers in my life, and also I took time off to raise my twin boys, and afterwards I went into a job, but it's part-time and I want something full-time. And because of because of budget issues, the part-time job I've researched that and actually went to the top person is not going to convert to a full-time job. And I was just wondering, when you were talking about building your resume and LinkedIn profiles, how you have like a headline for yourself, but it doesn't have to be the title of your current job. I have a lot of really good skills and I pick up skills easily, but I know it's difficult. I find I call it a weakness for me, but I get really bogged down in how other people will see it or not see it, and how do I actually convey this? So I'm curious about a situation where you have had, a couple of different professions, and actually different ones. I was a biochemistry researcher in academic settings, and I have publications in research, but for reasons not going into it now, I also was in business and I did finance at Verizon for a number of years, and then I, took time off to raise my kids. So now I'm working in as an academic tutor in a high school system for ELL students. So I have varied skills, but being analytical, detail oriented, being able to focus on difficult concepts, I'm really good at that.
Boom.
There you got it
Boom.
right there.
I love what you just said. So you gave us the background about your career that has had a number of different paths, which is great because you have this broad background. But you almost summarized yourself right there at that last sentence. One of the things that I think is really important about that top 1/3 of the resume when we were talking about that is to illustrate that broadness in your career. Not to just say, I did this and that's all I do, but I've done these things in these industries. That's what makes me up who I am today. And that's what makes me a candidate that's strong because of all of these different skills that I have and all of this background. So
it just seems that when you look at jobs, they seem to ask for very specific things, like, well, you have to know SAP, a certain computer thing, even though you're perfectly capable of picking up that database because you've done other difficult ones. They seem to be pretty, I guess, tunneled down into certain things. And that's what kind of worries me or bothers me or throws me off.
Yeah. So you need to interpret job descriptions a little bit. There's certain language in job descriptions. If it says required, that's a firm thing. If it says preferred or desired, that means they're flexible.
Okay.
If you see jobs on a regular basis that really interest you, and there's something in particular that is really preferred, preferred or even required, it might be in your best interest to go and try to get some orientation to a particular software package. Also, I want to say that, like what you just named, all the ability to attend to details, be analytical, all those things are great. And I think it's also important to shine a light on not just everything you've done in the past, but to shine a light on the things you want to do going forward. So some people think that their resume has to be everything in the kitchen sink.
No.
And it doesn't.
No.
Your resume, you don't have to include everything on your resume. You can include those things, even though you might be proud of some things you've done in the past. You can put them in there, but you don't necessarily have to have it all be front and center. And there may be things that you've done in the past that you would never want to do again. So you're not going to want to highlight those things, even if you were very proficient at them. So, you do have to make some choices and be a little picky.
But in terms of headers and titles for LinkedIn and resume, what would you choose? A title that incorporates the skills rather than a title that incorporates a specific job? Is that kind of what you're saying?
What do you mean on LinkedIn? You mean right under your name, the headline?
Yes.
Yeah, that really, you should be, that area right under your name, really think about what are the key words that if a recruiter was looking for you, what would they be looking for? Think about that. So if you've ever had a recruiter reach out to you, or if you do have a recruiter reach out to you, ask them, how did you find me?
Okay.
Think about, if you just write analytical, that's just too general.
Right.
You might want to say, if there's a certain skill you have or a strength or a talent or a professional area, like, maybe it's a certain type of analysis, you can put that in your headline. You want to, how do you want to be found?
Okay.
Hopefully that helps.
Also,
and sometimes you have to alter it. You can put a number of words under there, and sometimes you have to change it out if you think people aren't finding you. The other thing that's very important about being found on LinkedIn, you have to be active on LinkedIn. You don't have to be there every day. It's not like Facebook, but you do have to be engaged on LinkedIn. It means that you have to maybe add a little comment here and there or put a post up. Not just liking things. That's not engagement.
Okay.
So you need to be
Like a relevant article or something.
post a relevant article and then put something in the first comment space that maybe says why you thought it was a good article, or put something in the post, right? And then add maybe something else in the first comment space too.
Okay.
Those things raise your profile.
Yes. And I also want to recommend just taking a look at what other people do for their headlines. And again, not the ones that are using, I'm the director of blah, blah, blah at this company, but the ones that have done sort of what we were mentioning, and getting a flavor for what others are using and the types of words that they're using to describe themselves. And as Tammy mentioned, you can kind of play around with that headline to see if certain combinations of words or descriptors gets more interest in your profile. So definitely play around with that. Leave something up for a week or a week and a half and see if you get more traffic, and then switch it out. So you can kind of play around and do some testing.
Another way to play with that is to just put the word you're thinking of using in the search box and see what other profiles come up. And are those people who you feel are aligned with you professionally?
Okay.
So, for example, and you'll notice you'll start getting more invitations to connect with certain kinds of people too. Like the minute I put podcast host in my name, it blew everything out of the water.
Do you have to connect with everyone that asks you to connect? Is that
No, absolutely not.
Career suicide if you don't? Does it matter? I mean, I'm just curious.
No, it's not career suicide. You don't have to connect with everyone, but you can.
This is up to you.
You should feel okay about connecting with people who you don't know personally.
Okay.
And who just might look interesting to you, who you might never have a connection with. But, you do want to try to get over that 500 number if possible.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, you can have up to 30,000 connections on LinkedIn.
That's crazy.
I don't know. I don't like quantity. I go for quality.
There you go.
I understand.
I'm kind of like that, but
I understand, but algorithms work in certain ways, and if you want to be found and you want to have a good network and you want to have a robust, circle of people to interact with, there is a bit of a numbers game there. I've got about over 4,000 connections on LinkedIn, and it's changed the way I'm able to interact and behave on LinkedIn.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And occasionally there's somebody who I've been connected to who then decides to send me a personal note to my email and wants to become my friend or pen pal. Usually it's a male.
No good.
And then I unconnect from them. That happens once in a while. But, no harm done. I just, goodbye.
Yep. I also have a comment that may be helpful for people when you were talking about networking. I have gotten at least 2 jobs through networking. So here's what I call it. I call it the informational interview. So when I first got to Verizon, I had to start from the bottom up. So I had to go into a situation that was a call center. But for many other reasons, I wanted to move up into management, which was not easy. It was a union position. There were issues with different things that I won't go into. However, the other piece was the company was so big, it still is, that I didn't know all the departments and where I wanted to go to. So I took advantage of a professional organization within the company called Women Employees of Verizon or whatever. But in addition to that, I started researching pieces of the company. So I would call the vice president's office of XYZ and I'd ask to speak to their assistant. Many of the assistants I talked to were super nice, or I mean, they're business oriented and they have, time frames, but I would be very polite and just say, I like the company. I wanted to know what else might be out there and, how I could get some information from your boss that might be helpful. And I would say 99 out of percent out of 100, I would get an appointment with a VP I had never spoken to, seen, or ever would see again, okay, who was very good about giving me information. Some of it was useful, some of it was not in the end. I always sent a thank you. I always appreciated their time and experience. But eventually that led me to somebody who did have a work opportunity in management and asked me to apply, and that's how I was promoted. Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing, my job with the school system, part-time though it is, I work with all the ELL students, English as a second language, and that's monitored pretty well within school systems, okay, for their grants, state and government grants. There's a lot of rigmarole. I don't deal with the grant itself, but I'm paid through a grant. So they have to send in a lot of logistical information. Bottom line is, one time as a parent, because I have kids in the school system, I had a conversation with one of the higher administrators, just as a parent, and we talked about our backgrounds. Well, somewhere she remembered that. And when that opening came up, she told the hiring manager to contact me. I got an email out of the blue. I didn't know the woman. I didn't know about the position. I didn't know if I could do the position, honestly, right? So here I am, and I'm an older individual, and I'm now attending algebra, chemistry, and biology classes and tutoring high school students with an English issue in like chemistry, algebra, geometry, where I have to understand myself in order to do. Okay, so I've done this now for 2.5 years, so they like me.
That's great.
But it's
I love that
wonderful.
story. I love that story.
I love
But the
both
Perfect
stories.
story.
But the point is, don't be afraid to reach out. All you can get is a no. Okay, a no is a no, but
A
move
no is a
on.
no.
Yep. No, that's great. That's great advice.
Excellent advice.
Yeah, we're
Love it.
closing in on like 2:30 here, so I think we
I'm
had
sorry.
more questions. So
Matt has another
Is it a-
question.
yeah.
One more, Matt, quick question.
I'll try to make it quick.
No,
Actually,
take your time.
Okay.
Yeah, so Tammy, Elizabeth, Jessica, thank you very much for this hour and a half. It's been wonderful. I wanted to just ask a quick question, something that happened past couple of days, and wanted to see if this was the best use of my time. I came across a job that I know I'm not qualified for. It's a director of solutions marketing job at a cloud software company that, I've been following for a number of years and wanted to work for. I could probably do the job beneath it, like if it's a manager level job, but there wasn't a manager job, but I really want to work for this company. I decided to apply kind of in a speculative way. Like I wrote up a cover letter and amended my resume to that job, but with the intention of not getting that job and maybe the job below it, or maybe they have a need for it, that kind of job in the future. Is that an accepted way to look for a job where you're not qualified for that job, but maybe you're looking for the job beneath it or a future job?
Why not?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Tammy, I know you're going to want to chime in on this, but
Yes, I am.
the best way to get your information into a company that you're interested in is to get your information into a company that you're interested in. Now, if, what happens once it gets there could be they say, oh, Matt, this guy's got great experience. No, it's not quite right for this job, but there's another role over here that we haven't even posted yet. And now that we have this information about Matt and we know that he exists, we're going to reach out to him for this other position. I think definitely, and shooting high is never a bad thing. You know, a lot of times companies are looking for talent, and yes, you may or may not fit the bill for this particular position, but there could be other jobs in that company. And I have a real life story just to share before Tammy chimes in. A client of mine did the exact same thing except for the reverse. She applied for a role that was more junior because she felt like that was an exact fit for her her experience. The company called her and said, we actually want you for the higher level role. We haven't posted it yet, but we think that you should be at the higher level. So we'd like to interview you for that. She interviewed for it and she got it. So know that just what's in the job posting might not be the only opportunity. Yes, you did the right thing by applying for it. And I would keep that in mind. Everybody, you know, throw your hat in the ring. You don't always know where things are going to pan out, but if there's a company you're interested in, definitely put your hat in the ring.
So how did you apply for that job? Was it an electronic, I'm assuming, given the nature of the company, that you had to put your resume in through one of their applicant tracking systems?
So, actually, I found him on LinkedIn. I've been an industry analyst for a number of years, and I had followed this company, so I was aware of them. I know a few people in the company.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've had, went to conferences, had drinks with these guys, so I'm familiar with them, and I reached out to one of their executives, and
you did.
Without naming the job, he said, "Hey, there might be some opportunities we're hiring for. Go apply if appropriate." And so the only one that was there was this one that was just a little too senior for me.
Okay.
But to Elizabeth's point, why not? I wanted to get my name in there and restart the conversation. So I did it through LinkedIn. They didn't ask for a cover letter, and this I guess is another question, but they didn't ask for a cover letter, but I went up anyway just because of the nature of it. I knew I wasn't a great fit, so I wanted to pitch myself as a passionate person that has all these other skills and aspirations.
That's great.
So I appended my resume to a cover letter and then uploaded it as one file through LinkedIn.
Right.
But that's how I did it.
Okay. So here's the reason why I asked if it was an online application, which it was through LinkedIn, is that they use applicant tracking systems which match keywords. So there's a chance, even though you might be a pretty good match, that they will never see what you sent in. Okay. And so I don't say that to be negative. I say it because I think you have other options for making it known that you've applied for this job. If you know other people who work there, even if you just had a drink with them once, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to some of them and say, look, a job came up, I applied for it, and be honest and say, look, I think I'm a little junior for it, but I decided to apply for it anyway in the event that there might be something else related coming up, but
or the requirements change.
Or the requirements change, or they decide that I do fit the bill. I've been, following you guys and just would love to be, on your team. And that way they know who you are again. They know how much you really admire them. And, and there may be an employee referral system, and they're going to want to take your stuff and put it through. I was even thinking, in a cover letter you could write, hey, there's nothing more I would like than to have this job. It's the job I was perhaps imagining having a couple of years down the road, but I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and work for your company. And, so I would definitely reach out to the people who work there, more than one of them, because you don't know who will respond. And whoever responds first, they get the referral. And let them know you've applied. Because there's a chance that that your application may not have gone through the way you think it did. So I'm going to type in the chat this tool. And if people want to email me directly, I don't have the link right now, I can send you a link.
We're talking about JobScan, Tammy?
Yeah, I'm just sticking it in there. It's jobscan.io. .co. So it's not .com.co, and you'll find it if you just type that in. But it's a tool that watches the main applicant tracking systems that a lot of companies use, and it will, if you copy and paste your resume and the job description into this tool, it will give you a pretty good report that tells you what level of match and what words you've matched and what words you don't have in your resume. And it's both very helpful and very annoying. But you know, even if you say, well, I mean, I'm totally qualified, it doesn't matter. If you don't have enough of a match, these systems will not let you in, and you'll think you've applied and that you're just waiting for a phone call when no pair of human eyes has seen your credentials. I mean, this happens to people all the time, and they'll, you know, how many of you have said to yourself, I think my resume went into a black hole somewhere.
Yep.
Guess what? It did. This is the only tool that Elizabeth and I are aware of that's on the market. I'm shocked there's not another one out there. So they sell, you know, subscriptions to this, but I know that if you go onto it yourself, they'll give you 5 free scans. If you get a link from me, I can give you 10 free scans. I don't get anything out of it, so don't worry about, I mean, I'll get extra free scans on my account, and I'm always giving out, you know, links to people. So I've gotten a ton of free scans myself, but I don't get any payback. But you know, because usually you use up a few scans just applying for one job, because you have to keep retooling your resume a little bit. But it's a really interesting tool to use, and it's going to really show you what happens when your resume goes through one of these systems.
And I think another thing to keep in mind, yes, we have to be aware of the system, but also know that we as the people reading the job postings aren't always aware of the weight that's given to every single requirement in that job posting. So they may say, you know, maybe they don't say must have skills. Maybe it's just a laundry list of things, and you're thinking to yourself, how could one person possibly have all of those skills? In those cases, again, I recommend throwing your hat in the ring, because maybe some of those are weighted differently. Maybe certain skills are very important and others are nice to haves. And maybe they're willing to train on the nice to have stuff. So don't let the job posting throw you off. I always say, throw your hat in the ring and worry about the skills when you have the meeting and you understand, you know, how are these being prioritized? What are the things that are really essential to this role? And what are the things that, you know, are nice to haves? And we don't always know that at the level of the job posting. And I would also like to add, and I think this, Matt, is really important to what the situation that you've told us about, and also what Christina was mentioning, is use your network. So if you see another role at that same company, I would reach right out to the guys that you already are connected with and say, listen, I need to get my resume into the hands of that person who's hiring. Could you do that, or could you make that connection for me? Or can I use your name as a referral in the job application? You know, they may have a referral field, and those things do actually get looked at, the referrals, for sure.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Good luck.
You're welcome. Good luck with that too. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Are we getting a recording of this session after the fact, emailed to us, or from Jessica, or?
Yeah, I have been recording this session, so I will email it to at least all the registered, and also we'll try to make it available in the local TV station too.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So come next week for resume deep dive if you want. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jessica, for keeping us on track.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I didn't mean to rush you along. I'm sorry.
Not at all.
Thank you so much for all of your time, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Very much.
Everyone.
Thank you.